Just preparing. It's always a tricky part because I think it's working. We're just gonna let technology work itself. Okay, that looks good. As long as I see her. Oh, now we're cooking. Ladies and gentlemen, what a world we live in. For the first time ever, Matt Lukens and myself, your podcast host, Nithin are in the same room. And I don't know what to say, man.
It's a great time here. Technical issues aren't going to be a thing because we can just keep going. This is fine. This is great.
If they do happen, it's just going to happen for both of us.
Yeah.
Who cares? No big deal. All right. Well, look, this isn't what we're all going to talk about tonight. Of course, there's been so many updates as far as IU football recruitment's considered, commitments coming down the wire. There's been 5 of them in the last 10 days. Indiana basketball's got scheduling updates that we're going to dive into, and we're going to talk about so much more here on episode 205 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth coverage and analysis of IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday night, June 29th, 2021, where I'm your host, Nithin. Here's Matt Lukens. Matt, look, it's the last podcast episode in June. What a day we've picked to dive into some IU football recruitment updates. How's life, first of all? And look, Trevell Mullen committed to Indiana, and he's just one of 5 guys who made their way to Bloomington in a year. Tom Allen's absolutely crushing it.
Yep, he's absolutely destroying the football recruiting, quote unquote, standard for Indiana University. I mean, when you look at the 24/7 website and you look at the top recruits all time for Indiana football, 2 of them are in the top 3 for this next 2022 class, and Dasan McCullough and now Trevell Mullen. So, and then we also, Trevell Mullen commits. He's a great recruit, but we get another one of the Mullen brothers. We've already seen how the first one worked out. He's doing very well in the NFL. The second one is still at IU, killing it. And now we have the third. So I think, third time's the charm. He's going to be killing it as well. So very excited about that. I'm excited to be here in Bloomington. It's so nice to be back. I get to visit with some family today here. My brother lives here. And now I get to finally meet Nithin for the first time, which is crazy. He walked out the door of his apartment complex, and I was like, oh my, am I dreaming? What is happening here? This is so weird. But no, hey guys, this is an amazing time to be an IU sports fan in general. You got the Olympics going on. People are qualifying for the Olympics all over the place, especially in swimming and diving. You've got basketball commits, people visiting. I saw it was Jalen Hood.
Yeah, Shafino
visited today. A lot of stuff going on. It's weird because I remember the offseason for the last 2-3 years has been so boring, but this offseason has been jam-packed full of news.
Jam-packed, and I mean, this entire operation at the Hoosier Sound at Indiana HQ for the most part has been virtual, and now to actually go around and meet the people that make this engine go, it's pretty incredible. Look, here are the names in case you didn't know, in case you're a casual IU football fan. The names you need to know are corner Trevell Mullen, who committed to Indiana on June 20th. Linebacker Isaiah Jones said yes to Tom Allen and the Hoosiers on June 20th as well. Quarterback Josh Hoover committed to the Hoosiers on the 22nd. Offensive tackle Carter Smith on the 23rd. And then earlier today, we saw Ohio tight end Ryan Miller say he wants to come play for Tom Allen and Kevin Wright here at Indiana. And I know, Matt, you were talking when Kevin Wright was even hired, how his time at IMG Academy has helped Indiana's recruiting strategy. And you're seeing that take place here on the offensive side of the football.
Absolutely. And we're probably seeing him help as well in recruitments like Trevell Mullen from Florida as well. A lot of the guys coming from down south, they're going to be looking at, Coach Wright maybe helping in. He might not be the lead recruiter, but he's definitely somebody that's going to lend a voice and really a voice of reason to some really up-and-coming prospective recruits. And then, like you said, we had the tight end committed today, Miller from Ohio. He had an offer from Auburn. The people we are recruiting they might be some of them might be in the 500s, 700s, or whatever, but those would be the top end recruits that we used to get. Like the best recruit in the class would be in the 400s to 500s, and now it's like, oh, it's just a 3-star, 4-star recruit from the 500s. Like we're looking at the Son McCullough, who's a top 50 national recruit. So it just really eye-opening how fast Tom Allen has changed the recruiting structure here at Indiana.
No, it's super true. I mean, you talked about Ryan Miller, who had offers from places like Tennessee and Auburn, Trevell Mullen, Penn State and Oregon. Yeah. He spurned them to come play for the Hoosiers. All in all, you're seeing guys, Ryan Miller, the player we talked about just a minute ago, he's one of the top 20 prospects in the state of Ohio, one of the most football-rich, talent-rich states in the country. Carter Smith, another Ohio player, he's a top 20 prospect from the state of Ohio, and he's already 6'6", 275. I know Darren Hiller, the offensive line coach in Indiana, is salivating about that. Let's talk about Carter Smith. He had an offer from Virginia, a prominent ACC school, Tennessee as well, and Northwestern, who's obviously coming off a Big Ten title game run. So overall, Matt, I think what you're seeing here is Indiana succeeding on the field, and that's transferring to wins off the field.
Well, it's not just that. It's also Tom Allen's PR campaign over the last year finally paying off. I mean, it helps to have a good, fun head coach to play for. Some of the guys want to be around. You can tell how much – I don't have to explain this to you guys. We can tell how much our players want to play for Tom Allen. And now you're looking at younger players – looking at that and going, I want to play for him too. He looks like somebody fun to play for. Nick Saban doesn't exactly look fun to play for, but he's going to get results from you. This is just the inverse where Tom Allen's he'll probably get results from you too as well, but he's just fun to play for. So you're going to get a lot of recruits that are looking for a certain type of head coach, and you can sell that to recruits now.
Yeah, there's definitely a personality fit involved, and Tom Allen's probably not for everyone. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but of course he's also surrounded himself with so many quality assistants like DeLand McCullough at the running back coach position, Grant Hurd, the wide receivers coach, Nick Sheridan, the OC, Kane Womack moved on from the DC position, but Charlton Warren's the new DC here. Yeah. Talk about Darren Hiller and Casey Teagarden, Kevin Wright, the tight ends coach. All of a sudden you're seeing that there's a specific mission and the particular type of mindset that the Hoosiers had in mind. It's called LEO, and that's what's leading to a lot of really big prospect wins in football recruiting, at least starting for 2022. The high school class we've talked about on previous podcast episodes, the transfer market and the players from Florida State and Michigan and Ole Miss and places like A&M who have chosen to come play immediately for Indiana. So you're just seeing those things continue. How about 22 corner prospect James Mons, a 3-star? He is not committed yet, but here's his final 6 list of schools: Miami, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nebraska, Mississippi State, and Indiana. And Mons is planning on committing this weekend. So maybe the Hoosiers will have another big recruiting win to talk about next week here on the Hoosiers.
He's from my hometown, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, James Mons. So wow. Fort Pierce, Florida is like 15 minutes from my house. So he grew up playing. He plays at Fort Pierce Central, I believe, or Fort Pierce Centennial. I can't remember which high school he plays at, but that's one of our rival high schools from my high school that I grew up going to. So I'll send some good words for Tom Allen and the group down his way.
Are you saying he needs to be you need to be part of his recruitment? Like, just say I'll send a
few Twitter DMs down his way. Just let them know what's up.
Don't tweet at recruits, people. Yeah, don't tweet at recruits. So that pretty much wraps up the football recruiting. You guys know where things are at. Indiana's crushing it as far as 2022 recruiting is concerned. And it's really just the tip of the iceberg. Only 8 players have committed for that class. And you can expect, if Indiana especially has a really good football season in 21, which hopefully people are definitely expecting that, you might see a handful more high schoolers especially commit to play for Tom Allen and the Hoosiers. Quick reminder, last week we had Dell and Michelle on our podcast to talk about their book they were releasing, The Heart of a Hoosier. And we've been really excited to sort of promote and talk about that podcast episode that happened last week. You can go find it over on YouTube. It's episode 204. You can find it on our YouTube channel at the Hoosier Sound. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, Google or Apple or Spotify, wherever you name it, it's there. Highly recommend taking a listen to the podcast, because within there's a giveaway opportunity where you can win one of 2 free copies of the book. And we dove into so many different aspects of it, talked about the different chapters involved and how it translates to your life personally, all sorts of special moments and crazy moments that you may not know even if you're a really intense IU basketball fan. They really got in behind the scenes look and were able to take a look at all sorts of different stories and experiences. So if you go to the website, bit.ly/Hoosier giveaway, and the H and G need to be capitalized. So bit.ly/Hoosier giveaway, you can enter your information for a chance at winning one of those 2 free copies. You have to do this by July 5th, by the way. So before you go out and set the fireworks off to celebrate Independence Day, definitely head over to bit.ly/Hoosier giveaway, put your information in, then go out and party and have your barbecue. We will announce the winner on our podcast next Tuesday, so make sure all of you stay tuned for that. Matt, in other IU sports news, we had a bunch of basketball non-conference games finally released.
Finally.
We've been waiting for this. We were just talking before starting the podcast episode that basketball season doesn't start till November. But as far as the program's concerned, I bet for them it feels like it's right around the corner, and we're starting to see some games fall through the pipeline. We're not quite sure exactly how these games are going to fall in order, but this past week we heard news that St. John's and Syracuse, 2 prominent Power 5 high major schools, have been added to Indiana's schedule. St. John's will come to Assembly Hall as part of the Gavitt games. Indiana will head to Syracuse for the first true road game, at least to this point, listed on IU's schedule in the Mike Woodson era. Matt, let's start with Syracuse. I know that's the high-profile game everyone wants to talk about. Big Ten ACC challenge. What does it mean for Indiana to get a road game against Syracuse? Is this disappointing to you? Are you excited about this? Are you happy Indiana didn't get someone else? What are your thoughts?
I'm excited. I think it's a chance for us to excise those demons from so many years ago against Syracuse. I think it's a really good matchup for IU when it comes to – it's okay if we don't win the game, but it's going to lend to us playing against zone. It's really good practice against zone defenses for when it comes to March, because they play a very unique style of defense, obviously, but it's very different from what we're normally used to playing, which is man-to-man or even some little bit of pack line here and there.
Syracuse plays its own?
Syracuse plays its own? What?
Two
So it's good practice. 1, 2, it's a good road environment. You can have an argument about whether it's a terrible arena or not. That is up to you. But there are a fantastic crowd. I've watched many a Syracuse and Duke game. They will show up just as hard for us as well. So it's going to be a really good test for a team that's going to be trying to fit in a bunch of new pieces. So it's going to be a good game. It'll also test our shooting because, again, you're going to need to spread the floor against the zone.
Already getting shivers down my spine.
Yeah, and defensively as well, it's a good test for us because Buddy Boeheim is one of the best shooters in the country. They have a bunch of new pieces coming in. Again, a team last year that made a run in the tournament. So look out for that game. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's funny to think about how we talk about the Syracuse team and like, oh, they made a Sweet 16 run last year, but no one really considers them to be like all that great of a basketball team last year. And it was funny, like when you look at Syracuse and Indiana, I think you're going to look at 2 teams that are going to be better versions of themselves this season compared to last season. And you were talking about, hey, it's okay if we don't win. And, it's similar to me in a lot of ways to that Florida State road game we had last year in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, where Indiana and Florida State went into that game. Indiana was like a 1 or 2 point underdog, and it was a close game, and it went into overtime. And I expect that to be the case in this matchup as well. I expect Indiana to be a 1 or 2 point underdog going into the Carrier Dome. It's interesting when you look at the Rothstein Power 45, and I tip my cap to John Rothstein. You may not agree with a lot of his reporting or a lot of his opinions or whatever the case is, but his top 45 poll really nicely lays out how he thinks the teams stack up, and more importantly, who's coming and who's going from each of these rosters. And when you look at Syracuse, they've got a 5-star freshman coming in named Benny Williams, a 6'8" combo forward. Indiana, again, drawing another parallel to Florida State, had to deal with Scotty Barnes last year. Scotty Barnes now in the NBA draft process. They had to deal with Zaire Williams last year with Stanford. Williams now in the draft process. Benny Williams, no relation, is going to come in and play for Syracuse. As a 5-star freshman, probably start right away. Never mind their other additions, guys like Cole Swider, who's going to transfer from Villanova. Indiana was, under Mike Woodson, was going after Swider to see if they could add him to the team, but he chose to play for Syracuse. How about Symir Torrance, a transfer coming in from Marquette? And we talked about Buddy Boeheim. His brother Jimmy Boeheim is transferring over from Cornell to play for Syracuse. Jimmy Boeheim averaged about 16 points per game last year. Syracuse, by the way, ranks 28th in Rothstein's 45 going into this upcoming season. Indiana's 33rd. So you can expect that this match was probably going to be really close. Matt, as usual, though, Syracuse is a team that normally peaks in March.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it, tell me if you disagree, Indiana's got a chance to get a quad 1 win that'll look better and better as the year goes on.
Absolutely. Just like the Florida State game last year. Again, like you said, I also expect it to be a lot like the Florida State game last year. Really close, really tough, fought-out battle in the way north of New York in the frigid cold. Well, it'll be in November, right? So, it'll be cold there. Yeah. You'd be in the warmth of the Carrier Dome, which is, again, like I said earlier, a very interesting place to watch basketball.
For sure. Then the other game that really sort of grabbed the headlines that was announced within the last week was St. John's, the Red Storm, who are coming in, coached by former Arkansas headman Mike Anderson. They're coming off a 16-11 season in the Big East, where they just missed out on the NCAA tournament. They've got an interesting roster. Posh Alexander is their starting point guard and is going to come in after averaging double digits in points per game last season. But what's interesting to me, and the player all of you really need to pay attention to, is guard, well, really sort of swingman, Julian Champagnie, who's got a brother, Justin, who played at Pitt last year. Julian Champagnie is going through the draft process right now for the 2021 NBA draft. And here, these are the two different ways it can go, right? If Champagnie decides he wants to commit and stay in the NBA and actually test the draft waters, first of all, the rumors are he's probably going to get taken in the second round. And all of a sudden, that means the St. John's matchup loses a little bit of luster, but increases Indiana's chances of winning that game. The other side of it is Champagnie, who last year averaged 19.8 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. If he returns to St. John's, all of a sudden, I think that puts the Red Storm in the at least bubble conversation for the NCAA tournament, especially if Posh Alexander, that point guard, takes a step up. And all of a sudden, Indiana gets a high-profile non-conference game at home. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you, do you want Champagnie to stay in the NBA draft consideration and keep his name in and get picked in a month? Or do you want him to return to St. John's, add some more high quality to that matchup, and really give Indiana a big-time chance, a big-time test in the non-conference slate?
Well, hot take, I want Champagnie gone.
Ooh, okay.
Look, beating a Power 5 team at home has proven to be difficult the last couple of years. I would like an easier non-conference
Archie Miller did well, though.
5.
He beat Marquette a couple years ago. He beat Florida State. Marquette 3 years ago, Florida State 2 years ago.
Yeah, but then things fall apart in the conference play. I want some easier wins in the non-conference for this team, especially since, like I said before, you're putting a lot of pieces together. You got a new coach, new staff, new system, and like 5 or 6 new players who are going to be playing. All right, like that is a lot. You have some concrete foundations in the likes of Trace Jackson Davis. You've got Race Thompson returning. You've got the rest of the young guys returning. You have Christian Lander maybe even improving and returning for next year. but that's still a lot to put into one team. So the more teams that we can play that are going to be winnable but still like be a learning experience at the same time, those are going to count. So teams like maybe our opener, right, might be a fantastic opportunity for IU to improve.
I want Champagne back. I want him to come back and say, look, St. John's, I'm going to make you a top 25 basketball team and have them march into Assembly Hall. Because remember, now Assembly Hall is probably going to be packed to the rafters once again.
Absolutely.
Let me see, a little St. John's, IU, a little New York City, kind of like a Pacers-Knicks, right? Style of, New York City against Indiana. Let's see what's up. Clashing styles of play. I'm blanking on what they gave that matchup the nickname, Pacers-Knicks match. I'm blanking on it. I shouldn't say it, really. I shouldn't say it off the top of my head. But let's go. Let's see a little clashing styles of play and give Indiana a quality Big East road win. I will say Champagne last year scored double digits in every game. And how about a 14.13 rebound performance against Villanova? We all know that's not too shabby. The season opener last year against Boston College, 29 points, 10 rebounds, 2 of 5 beyond the arc. And what's interesting to me is that he played 25 minutes, at least 25 minutes in every game. So didn't really get into foul trouble all that much. Stayed fresh, stayed available, and Mike Anderson really gave him a very long leash, understandably, when you've got that much ability and skill and talent like Champagne does. So stay in touch. Stay tuned to Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter. We're going to update you, make sure you're ready to go with all the Julian Champagne news, depending on what decision he does make. Of course, the match against St. John's will become a lot easier. I want to see a couple heavyweights go at it and give Indiana a really high-quality test. Real quick, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And we've got to tip our cap to the IU athletes who are now going to have the ability to use their name, image, and likeness starting on July 1st. Indiana has announced a partnership with a company called Altius Sports to help provide guidance as far as strategy and policy, considering the NIL developments that have come through recently. Altius is a company that has already partnered with USC and LSU and Texas and North Carolina. So they have an idea of what they're doing, and they've already set a template as to where they want to go with that. We're going to have more details for you in a podcast next week about the NIL stuff, the Supreme Court decision that came down over the course of the last 10 days, and we'll really fill you in because the policy and things like that don't kick in until July 1st, and this will give us a few days to just kind of see how things develop and foster, at least in the first week of what really is a new era in the NCAA. But quick reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. And this is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That type of support really helps us grow this podcast. Man, another big game on this non-conference slate is the one that's normally on there every other year. Notre Dame and Indiana will head to Bankers Life Fieldhouse and do battle there. Notre Dame returns Prentice Hub, Dane Goodwin. They've got Paul Atkinson transferring in from Yale. They're listed 44th and Rossi's 45. How do you look at this matchup? The expectation should be that Indiana gets a win here, right?
Yeah, I mean, as even John Rossi, who's low on the Hoosiers, I think, is thinking that it should be a win. And I agree. This absolutely should be a win. Again, Bankers Life Fieldhouse against Notre Dame has proven to have some magical moments in the past with IU. Of course, you think back to Juwan Morgan's game-winning layup and Zach McRoberts' rebound. But
Armand Franklin's game winner.
Game winner. Yeah, there's a bunch of really good memories coming from that game. So I'm just excited to see maybe another close, good game. We should win, but it'll be close because it's in Indy, it's Bankers Life, it's against IU. You know Notre Dame's going to be ready to go.
Yeah, they're going to be ready to go, and the Mike Bray coach team is always a really well-coached team, and they're going to be chomping at the bit after last year where their season didn't go all that well. I did want to give a special mention about Paul Atkinson, who's from West Palm Beach, Florida, but he's transferring in from Yale. He played a major role on a lot of really good Yale teams in his 3 years out in New Haven, Connecticut. His final year at Yale, which was the pandemic-shortened 2019-20 season, how about this? 17.6 points per game, 7.3 rebounds per game. And he even took a few threes, not afraid to let it fly. We'll see what kind of development he had last year when he had a season off. We'll see if he maybe has refined that jump shot. But if nothing else, he's a skilled, versatile 6'10", 220 forward center that Trayce Jackson-Davis and perhaps someone like Logan Duncombe will have to deal with inside. Michael Durr coming over from South Florida might be that matchup too. So, look, the one thing I've noticed, Matt, on this schedule is that whether you look at the big-time teams like Syracuse, Notre Dame, or St. John's, or even the lower-ranked teams, Indiana's going to get a lot of tests in this non-conference slate.
Yeah, for sure. It's looking like it's going to be even more tests coming out soon, the way it's setting up.
And what's crazy is as we dive into some of these other, I guess, lower-ranked opponents, you can call them whatever you want, there's not much we can really tell you about Merrimack or Northern Kentucky. Both teams are going to come in. They definitely fit that cupcake billing. Indiana should be able to lock up a couple easy wins against those two teams. But there are two others, Louisiana Lafayette as well as Marshall. A couple teams that when I saw Mike Woodson put them on the non-conference schedule, all of a sudden a little uneasiness set in. A little bit of discomfort, indigestion set in. Let's start with Louisiana Lafayette. The Ragin' Cajuns are a quality team, all right, who come over from the Conference USA, and what is really interesting about the Sun Belt. And what's interesting about these guys is they return a high volume scoring guard named Cedric Russell. You may not be familiar with his name, but he's somebody who led the Ragin' Cajuns to a 17-9 record last year, 4th place finish in the Sun Belt. But Russell averaged 17 points a game last season, and he's a super senior. So he's one of those guys, almost like someone who technically would have had a senior year last year. He's taking advantage of the NCAA rules and regulations. So, Matt, we've talked about Rob Finney as a guard stopper, Christian Lander, he's going to get a test. Cedric Russell, for example, is someone who, even though he's on Louisiana Lafayette, he's not someone to laugh about or consider a cupcake opponent.
No, absolutely. You should not think this is a cupcake opponent at all. In fact, I am very scared of this guy because, as you know, in recent history at least, IU has a bit of an issue guarding guards that can pop off during games, and he's a guard that certain can pop off at any given moment. So, hopefully those rims in Assembly Hall aren't too kind to him when Louisiana Lafayette visits.
I mean, that's not a joke. I mean, this is the guy, Cedric Russell, last year alone, how about a 40% three-point percentage on 7 attempts per game? So he can absolutely put up a 30-burger pretty easily. Louisiana Lafayette also plays really fast. So buckle up, get ready. If Indiana wants to be a team that plays quickly, and I know Mike Woodson has talked about adopting the NBA type of basketball style of play, Louisiana Lafayette will absolutely fit that requirement. They had a really good season last year, like I said, had a winning record, well above 500, so they're going to be a tough matchup. They also at Arizona transferred Jordan Brown to their front court. So he's somebody who scored in double figures for Arizona during different games last year, so he's going to come over. There is some uncertainty whether or not he'll be eligible for this upcoming season, but if Jordan Brown does get deemed eligible, keep an eye out for him in Louisiana's front court. That's going to be another matchup. He's sort of in a 6'8" mold, so you can probably expect Trayce Jackson-Davis, maybe Miller Kopp on a miss. You probably expect Race Thompson, Trayce Jackson-Davis, or Race Thompson to get that matchup. The other non-conference showdown that I thought was really interesting was Marshall. And Marshall's a squad that, much like Louisiana Lafayette, solid team, good coaching, winning record last year, and they've got a guard named Tavion Kinsey. And Tavion Kinsey is somebody whose name you may not quite recognize, but he's an NBA draft prospect for 2022. He's somebody that came in last year, and the expectation was that he was going to play last season at Marshall, do whatever he can do, and then head off to the NBA draft. But he decided to return. And Kinsey's a potential 22 first-rounder, and last year averaged 17 points per game. And Matt, once again, it's going to be another test in the backcourt for these Indiana guards.
Absolutely. I mean, like like we've said previously, this is going to be a hard non-conference schedule for a team that's put together a lot of pieces. Yeah. So they're going to be in really good shape or really poor shape by the time we get to conference conference play. Let's hope it's the former than the latter.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, did I say 17 points per game? Kinsey actually ended up averaging 19 points per game last year, 19 and a half to be exact. And once again, somebody who can hit the three, 41%. He only took a couple threes per game, and that's probably some of the feedback he got as to why to return to Marshall. But he's a 6'5" combo guard out of Columbus, Ohio, and didn't put his name in a transfer, or at least he didn't transfer out of Marshall. Somebody who wants to come back to the herd. And last year, that's a school that had a really good year. They went 15-7, quality team, and it's definitely going to be someone that Mike Woodson's going to have a tough time figuring out matchups against, especially when you're considering these guys like Kinsey or like Cedric Russell on Louisiana can go off for 30 points just like that. Quick time for a social media shout out. And look, Matt mentioned it a minute ago. Jalen Hood-Schifino, a 2022 4-star shooting guard. He's on his way to visit Bloomington.
He's here.
He's visiting. Wow, much like you and him.
Yeah, we decided to hook up schedules.
basically same humans. But Hood-Schifino is just one of many basketball prospects, especially in the 2023 class when you consider some of these names. Owen Freeman, a center. How about in-state Cathedral high school player Xavier Booker in the class of 23? He came to Bloomington as well. Caleb Glenn, a 23 top 70 wing. Jalen Hooks, a 23 small forward. How about Kyle Filipowski, a 23 what was the description you gave him earlier, Matt?
Skilled big man.
Skilled
3-point sniper.
Oh man, all those words are just music to my ears. And hey, remember there was another 23 prospect, Justin Taylor, who was considering Indiana, but he committed to Syracuse. So even though Indiana and Syracuse are playing each other in this upcoming basketball season, who knows? Maybe in a future Big Ten ACC matchup, the Hoosiers and Mike Woodson take on Justin Taylor and Syracuse. So that'll be interesting to see. It'll be fun to digest. Of course, overall, just as far as social media shout-outs are considered there with the recruits, keep an eye out for us over on Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. We'll keep you informed on all the different visits, all the different prospects, all the different offers that Mike Woodson has thrown out to players that he feels like will fit this Indiana basketball. This brand new, modern day, let's go innovative Indiana basketball culture that is going to be, I think, quite a departure from what we used to see. So it'll be fun to keep track of that. Like I said, once again, over on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. You can find us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. So, Matt, look, we've talked about a lot of different non-conference opponents here over the course of the different updates that have come through in the last few weeks. Out of the different opponents we've talked about, whether it's Syracuse, St. John's, Notre Dame, Marshall, Louisiana. Remember, there are still a few games that still need to be scheduled, but out of those, which one stands out as the one you're most excited about?
Well, I'm definitely most excited about is the Syracuse game. Like Big Ten ACC Challenge is like one of the best times of the year for sports, and especially college basketball. It'll be fun. You looked at the rest of the schedule for the ACC Big Ten Challenge. I'll be talking to Ant Wright tonight about that a little bit. Look at Michigan, North Carolina, Virginia, Iowa, which is not a very big game, but Iowa will be fun watching McCaffrey get very mad at Virginia's defense.
Well, Iowa's got Wieskamp. And the thing with Joe Wieskamp is he may return to Iowa if he goes through his NBA draft prospect. And if he does, if he goes through this process and decides to return to Iowa, then the Hawkeyes all of a sudden become a much better team. But from what I'm hearing, he's probably on his way to the NBA, and that would really wreck Iowa's chances of making the tournament next year, especially in a tough conference. And then you talk about the one that excites me is the Duke-Ohio State matchup.
Yeah.
And we just found out earlier today that Dwayne Washington Jr. is going to stay in the NBA draft. So Indiana's catching a few breaks as far as some of these Big Ten players keeping their names in the draft consideration. Of course, we'll also keep an eye out for Julian Champagnie here out of St. John's.
So Trevell Williams came back for Purdue.
Trevell Williams.
So we didn't really catch too much.
Well,
everything evens out in the end.
I also don't know how legitimate his case is as far as becoming a pro right now, but that's a whole different conversation. So to answer the question, who's the matchup you're most excited about?
Syracuse.
Nice, very good. Yeah, That's going to be a good one, and you better believe that one will probably get the ESPN treatment, even though I know Big Ten ACC gets ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPNU. I think they're going to stick that one on the flagship network. I've got my eyes on the St. John's matchup. Especially if Champaign returns, one trend I'm noticing is that Mike Woodson is scheduling a lot of teams that play fast. And St. John's last year played at the 10th fastest tempo in Division I, according to KenPom. We talked about Louisiana Lafayette. Now, I know Syracuse isn't exactly the slowest basketball team on the planet, but of course, that's a game that was scheduled for Indiana, not one that, Indiana sort of went out and consciously organized. Of course, that's the case with St. John's too, but it just so happens that when you incorporate Louisiana Lafayette's fast tempo, St. John's fast tempo, now you are really seeing that this Hoosiers team will get tested in the non-conference, at least from a pace standpoint. By the way, Marshall, the team we also called out, they play the 20th fastest pace in college basketball. So, and of course, these teams are returning their starting point guard. So you better believe they're going to be raring to go at Assembly Hall. I'm mostly excited about the St. John's game for that reason. Of course, I love the opportunity for Indiana to potentially, if Julian Champagne returns, potentially get a strong non-conference win. I don't know exactly if St. John's will probably be a tournament team if Champagne returns. So probably. You can record a non-conference win against a tournament team, even if it's at Assembly Hall, you'll feel really good about yourself. Now, unfortunately, only 8% of people who responded to our poll over at the Hoosier Sound agree with me and feel like the St. John's matchup is the most exciting. I asked all of you who follow us at the Hoosier Sound, which game are you looking forward to most on the IU basketball non-conference schedule? And the options are interesting, man. I'll let you think about this for a minute. The home opener, neutral site versus Notre Dame, home versus St. John's, or at Syracuse. You told me your answer was at Syracuse. Guess which one's leading?
Syracuse.
The home opener leads the way. More people are excited about the home opener whenever that takes place. We're still waiting, I believe, for official confirmation on that, unless I missed something. But we're 41% of the respondents to our poll right now. We've already had 50 in the first few minutes since this poll was released. 41% say that they're most excited for the home opener. 37% agree with you and say at Syracuse. 14%. Notre Dame has jumped St. John's in this poll, and I didn't take much objection to that. 14% say neutral versus Notre Dame, and then 8%, like I said, think the home match against St. John's is most interesting.
I think that makes sense. People just want the basketball season to start. I'm with them there. I just want the first game to be there so I can see what this team is going to look like and how Mike Woodson plays. So I can't wait.
Man, that's going to be fun, especially assuming that we get a packed house in the student section that's ready to go. And hopefully by the time basketball season comes around, Indiana football is at 6-0 or 7-0, and everyone's just feeling the vibes.
And we're talking about playoffs.
And we're talking playoffs. And, the 12-team setup isn't going to be approved for this upcoming season. But if it were, I think Indiana would even have a better shot. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see how all that plays out. So, Matt, as we wind down tonight, I apologize to the YouTube fam. I know the lighting's a little bit shaky in here. It didn't account for the sun going down. That's on me. But overall, Matt, as we wind down here on this Tuesday night, what are your closing thoughts?
One, awesome to be here with you again. Finally meet each other in person and not have to worry about COVID or anything. It's great. No. Two, super excited to see what the rest of the offseason holds, and maybe we get a commitment in the next couple of weeks. It seems like a lot of guys in the 2022 class are committing. Are starting to commit and looking at schools. We've had a bunch of people on campus, so you'd think maybe one of them might commit, which would be nice for the Hoosiers and for the basketball team. And then keep your eyes out for some football commits because they seem to be coming in every other day now. It's kind of like I feel like I'm seeing like 4-star recruits come in for visits to IU football every day. So it's really the football recruiting is really starting to pick up. I know we let off the podcast with that, but that should really be the big story of this podcast is just the amount of success that Tom Allen and the staff is finding in recruiting young high school football players.
Yeah, that's the headline for me too. And I know we're excited about Syracuse and St. John's, Notre Dame, and these non-conference basketball matchups. And of course, we'll get more announcements. The non-conference slate's not filled up, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But we talked about Trevell Mullen, talk about Isaiah Jones and Carter Smith and Ryan Miller and Josh Hoover. And these are players who, it's not a matter of Indiana needs them more than they need Indiana. It's mutual. It's the symbiotic thing now where highly rated high school football players are saying, yeah, you know what? We saw what Tom Allen accomplished over the last couple of years. Don't forget that the 2019 football season, Indiana had a very successful one before their rampage through the Big Ten in 2020. Recruits are seeing that take place over the last couple of years, and it is really paying off. But that about wraps it up for our 205th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. Once again, sorry for the lighting issues. We didn't want to get up and move around and make things happen. It's all sorts of crazy technical things that you don't think about until you start recording. Sure. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.